So we're going to talk about language and personality. Why are we going to talk about it is because maybe you can already observe the differences we displayed when we speak different languages. If you have watched our previous episodes in Mandarin, you will probably realize I behaved differently.
I think that's an understatement.
Behaved differently when I speak different languages. We also, not only me, Jia also has encountered similar things in life, have feedback from friends and families. So we would like to discuss this interesting topic.
Yeah, I think this really sort of stemmed from a lot of people that are commenting about your outgoing personality. And it's an interesting observation because in our daily conversation, we typically would switch between Chinese and English. That's not because we think we're better than other people. It really is. I think when you live in a particular place long enough, what typically happens is your mind is molded to fit a specific culture and specific language pattern. And what we've discovered is that when we're speaking Chinese, there's a particular type of demeanor that I would have when we're having conversation with people. Say, you sound very different when you speak in Chinese versus when you speak in English. And I thought there is probably a good discussion that we can have around that.
Yeah.
And what do you think is causing that?
Yeah, I have some hypothesis, did some research into it. Yes, it is a very interesting topic. So I actually found some relevant research in terms of psychology and linguistic. Without getting too technical into that, after all, we are not experts in those areas.
Yeah.
So I would like to share some of my personal experience. When I was sharing flats with flatmates. I remembered my friend Alex, he's French, and he was asking me, wow, like, were you speaking just now? I was like, yeah. I was video chat with my parents on WeChat. And he was like, wow, you sounded so differently when you speak English versus speaking Mandarin. I was like, how so? I was, intrigued. And he told me, when you were speaking English, you sound like a civilized princess. But when you were speaking Mandarin, you were angry at your parents. You were having an argument. And then I started to reflect, why is that so? First of all, granted, yes, he could not speak Mandarin. So the two languages are completely different in terms of intonation and sounding, right? And so, yes, granted, he probably interpreted the intonation difference or pronunciation differences between languages too. But from my personal point of view, I realized I grew up in a family that we do have a bigger volume when we speak, not because we hate each other. It's just how we communicate it. Also, the local dialect can sound quite rude too. It's not the most beautifully spoken dialect.
Having, growing up speaking Ningbo dialect, I completely concur.
I realized that is, factor one. I grew up in a situation that we spoke with bigger volume, we spoke more animatedly because I wanted to be heard. So how should you be heard? You want to raise your volume instead of raising your argument, but you're raising your volume so you can be heard. And when I video chat with my parents, for example, I was so worried they couldn't understand me if I kept my volume low. So naturally, I raised my volume. And after half an hour call, I realized it took so much energy from me. It's more tiring than spoke like 3 hours in English for myself, which is really interesting. And second of all, I think the cause is probably is a cultural. When we spoke languages, we not only speak language, we are adapt ourselves into a specific culture. So maybe that's where the different personality comes from.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying is that when you're having a conversation through WeChat with your family, after 30 minutes, it feels like 3 hours. My version of that is, I typically get a sore throat after I talk to my father for about 45 minutes, because we speak so loudly towards each other. But an interesting point I've heard, I think is not a quote from someone, was that when you're trying to speak really loudly, it really is the fear of the other person might not be able to hear you. That's both in a physical distance, but also psychological difference. It's the gap that might exist between you and the other person. And I feel like this could be an indication where the fact I've lived here for so long, my fear is that if I'm not loud enough, I can't really convey my thoughts and my ideas to them, which causes me to speak really loudly.